When the billionaire CEO slammed a file onto the stage, his voice rang out. You stole from the people who trusted you. Silence crushed the gala as Amelia Brooks, 29, stood alone, unmoving. But what he didn't know, she carried a secret powerful enough to ruin him. Under glittering chandeliers, cameras clicked, and the sharp scent of champagne cut through the tension. In 60 seconds, the balance of power would flip forever. John Whitmore wasn't just another wealthy man, he was the billionaire. At 47, John Whitmore had built a tech empire from scratch. His name alone was enough to make competitors tremble. Tailored suits, a sharp gaze, a reputation for dismantling rivals without mercy. Whitmore was the kind of man who thrived in boardrooms and bent markets to his will. Across from him stood Amelia Brooks, 29, single mother from Easton, a town most billionaires couldn't find on a map. She had built Moms Rising from her kitchen table, balancing a crying infant and a second-hand laptop into a community movement. No celebrity endorsements, no corporate sponsorships, just grit and resilience. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. He navigated private jets and power deals. She juggled food stamps and daycare schedules. Tonight's gala, beneath the vaulted ceilings and glittering chandeliers, shimmered with polished elegance. Champagne flutes clinked softly. The scent of expensive perfume hung in the air. It was a night for celebrating philanthropy, not for settling scores. Whitmore didn't see Amelia as a woman with a cause. He saw a threat to his carefully curated reputation. Anonymous tips, whispers about donation irregularities, it was all he needed. Amelia had heard the murmurs. She knew about the investigators lurking near her home. But she wasn't prepared for what was coming. As Whitmore's accusation echoed through the hall, the crowd froze. Donors, politicians, celebrities, every eye locked on her. She should have crumbled. She should have denied, apologized, begged. Instead, Amelia did something no one, especially Whitmore, expected. She smiled. And so, the first move had been made, but the real game was just beginning. John Whitmore didn't believe in coincidences, not in business, not in life. And something about Amelia Brooks didn't sit right with him. He called his private investigator a man adept at uncovering what didn't want to be found. Financial records, property deeds, school enrollments. But with John, too normal was the worst sign. Anonymous emails surfaced claims of mismanaged funds and missing donations. No hard proof, but enough to plant seeds of doubt. John knew the game perception mattered more than truth. If he could raise enough suspicion, he could dismantle her before she became a real threat. While Amelia organized food drives and job training workshops, she spent her evenings packing simple meals for single mothers, whispering encouragement to tired children who barely knew what hope felt like. All the while, the shadow grew behind her, silent, unseen. And John, he waited, patient. But if Amelia wouldn't fall on her own, he would push her. The clock was ticking, and the gala was marked on his calendar, the perfect stage for the fall. What he didn't know while he built his case, Amelia was preparing something else entirely. Whitmore no longer hesitated. Strategy replaced doubt. For weeks, he orchestrated every move with precision, anonymous tips to journalists, unofficial audits triggered, rumors seeded carefully in the right circles. He didn't need evidence. He needed noise enough to drown her out. Slowly, cracks appeared. Speaking engagements vanished. Donations shrank. Trusted volunteers left without a word. Amelia fought harder, longer hours, more events, more smiles for cameras that now lingered too long, too curiously. But fatigue stalked her like a silent predator. In her small, dimly lit office, Amelia sorted through letters of withdrawal and polite rejections. Her hands sometimes trembled, but her jaw stayed set. Whitmore watched from afar, convinced the end was near. He set his sights on the upcoming gala grand, public, unforgiving. Amelia would have no defense, no allies, no way back. The folder he prepared was thick financial statements, anonymous testimonials, highlighted discrepancies, a curated tale of betrayal. All that remained was the spectacle. But while Whitmore rehearsed his ambush, Amelia wasn't standing still. John marked the gala as the perfect strike, a night where Amelia would have no escape. But what he didn't know, she was ready with a counterattack that would flip the game entirely. The ballroom glittered under 1,000 crystal lights. Champagne flutes clinked. Muted conversations floated elegant. expectant. John Whitmore thrived in rooms like this. He moved through the crowd with calculated ease, exchanging curt nods and firm handshakes. In his hand, the file thick, heavy, felt like a loaded weapon. Across the room, Amelia Brooks stood by a modest donor's table. No designer gown, no glittering jewelry, just a simple navy dress and the quiet composure of someone who knew she didn't belong. The evening dragged on award, speeches, a string quartet performance, mere formalities. When the final applause faded, Whitmore made his move. A champagne glass hung mid-air suspended as all eyes turned to the stage. Without announcement, Whitmore stepped up and reached the microphone, tapping it once. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice smooth, steady, "we gather here tonight to celebrate charity, integrity, trust." He paused, letting the words settle. But what happens when that trust is broken? The room stiffened. Conversations halted. A slow ripple of murmurs spread. With deliberate motion, Whitmore lifted the file high. "I regret to inform you that one among us has betrayed the very ideals we're here to uphold." Another pause calculated. Then he fixed his gaze on Amelia. "Amelia Brooks," he said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "You've misused charitable funds for personal gain." Gasps. Shuffling chairs. A glass dropped and shattered. Amelia didn't flinch. Whitmore's mouth tightened. He opened the file, flipping through pages. Unaccounted donations. Discrepancies in financial statements. Testimonies from insiders. Piece by piece, he built his case. "You stole from the people who trusted you," he concluded, echoing the accusation that had first silenced the room. All eyes locked on Amelia. This was when most people cracked under the hush, under the weight of 100 stares. Whitmore waited, but Amelia didn't flinch. She stepped forward steady, deliberate, and, without hesitation, took the microphone from his hand. Amelia adjusted the microphone, her fingers steady. For a moment, she simply stood there, surveying the room, the sea of expensive suits, glittering jewelry, the barely concealed judgment in 100 pairs of eyes. She drew a steady breath. "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore, for your concern," she began, voice calm, threaded with steel. "You've accused me of misusing funds, of betraying trust." Without missing a beat, she reached into her small bag and pulled out a slim folder. "Since you've been so thorough," she said, "perhaps you missed a few things." She handed the folder to a staff member, who relayed it to the AV technician. Moments later, the main screen flickered to life. Images appeared, rows of women and children standing in front of refurbished shelters, classrooms filled with single mothers learning job skills, medical bills stamped paid. Each image matched with audited, verified financial statements. Amelia spoke as the images played. Every dollar donated went exactly where it was promised. Every project audited, every story verified. The room shifted. Whispered conversations, furtive glances. Amelia turned back to Whitmore. "But since we're discussing integrity," she continued, her tone sharpening, "maybe we should talk about yours." Another click, another slide. Emails flooded the screen correspondence between Whitmore's office and various news outlets. Documents orchestrating a smear campaign. Gasps rippled again, but this time, not at her. Amelia stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "You tried to destroy me because you thought no one would believe a single mother over a billionaire." Her voice stayed calm but carried weight, the sound of someone with nothing left to lose and everything to protect. "You were wrong." The room held its breath. For a moment, no one moved. Then the murmurs began, low, uneasy. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. One donor whispered to another. Some turned toward Whitmore, their expressions shifting from confusion to suspicion. He stood frozen, lips pressed in a hard line. Amelia held the room in the palm of her hand. "Integrity isn't what you claim in speeches," she continued. "It's what you prove when no one's watching." The words hung heavy. On the screen behind her, images scrolled, photographs, audits, testimonials, undeniable evidence Whitmore had overlooked in his rush to destroy her. Polite applause broke the silence, hesitant at first, then stronger. One prominent donor stood and quietly left the room. A young staff member suppressed a grin. Amelia stepped away from the microphone. Whitmore didn't move, still clutching his useless file. Amelia gave a small nod to the audience and walked off stage, shoulders straight, head high. Behind her, the murmurs grew, not about her, but about him. Whitmore remained alone, the file drooping at his side, a man who had built empires but failed to see the simplest truth. In that moment, the eyes of the room delivered their silent verdict: Whitmore had lost. But his story wasn't over yet, and tonight was only the opening move. The fallout began before sunrise. Headlines exploded across news sites and social media feeds. Billionaire CEO publicly embarrassed after failed smear attempt. Single mom outsmarts tech tycoon at gala. Clips of the confrontation went viral. Amelia's calm, Whitmore's silence. Her charity website crashed under the surge of traffic. Donations poured in. Interview requests flooded her inbox. In newsrooms, reporters tapped furiously at keyboards. Twitter buzzed with hashtags. Live streams replayed the moment Whitmore froze on stage. Comment sections flooded with support for Amelia and ridicule for Whitmore. A viral meme showed Amelia holding the mic, captioned, "When you're louder with receipts than he is with accusations." Meanwhile, Whitmore's office locked its doors. For years, he had been the untouchable giant, feared, respected, envied. Now he was a cautionary meme. Boardrooms turned cold. Allies who once fought for his favor now fought to distance themselves. His company's stock prices wobbled, then dipped. Investors demanded explanations. Inside his penthouse office, Whitmore watched it all unfold, fists clenched at his sides. Every channel, every feed, every headline carried his name and not the way he wanted. In private group chats among the city's elite, whispers grew louder. A board member typed a message: "Emergency session." Another replied, "Tomorrow." He's a liability now. Whitmore tried to hold on, but perception was a tide no man could command. And this was just the beginning. The tipping point came faster than anyone expected. A major news outlet published an expose inside Whitmore Technology's secrets and scandals. It wasn't just tax dodges or shady stock deals. Former employees came forward, alleging that over $5 million in taxes had been fraudulently claimed, and internal reports revealed a culture of harassment and retaliation. Lawsuits followed. Regulators announced formal investigations. Board members, once loyal to a fault, convened in secret. The empire John Whitmore had spent decades building began to crack at its foundation. Shareholders panicked. Public confidence evaporated. Meanwhile, Amelia Brooks watched quietly from afar. She hadn't engineered his downfall. She had simply defended herself. But in doing so, she'd exposed a rot too deep to conceal. Whitmore tried to fight back: public apologies, interviews, promises of reform. But it was too little, too late. In an emergency session, the board ousted him, citing irreparable damage to company integrity. Headlines were brutal: Whitmore falls from grace. Billionaire CEO toppled after charity gala disaster. Amelia's mom's rising flourished. Donations tripled. New programs launched. Her name became synonymous with resilience and quiet strength. In the few interviews she granted, Amelia never mentioned Whitmore. She didn't have to. His silence spoke loud enough. Months later, at a small ceremony away from cameras, Amelia accepted an award for her work, a simple plaque inscribed with one word: courage. She stood alone at the podium, quiet determination in her eyes. Some battles are fought with noise. Others are won with silence. Whitmore's fall seemed complete, but few realized deeper forces were still in motion, and Amelia's real battle was only just beginning. Months passed. The media cycle shifted, as it always did. New scandals erupted. New headlines claimed attention. But Amelia Brooks remained steadfast and consistent. Mom's Rising grew beyond anything she had ever imagined. New branches opened across the country. Job training programs expanded. Scholarships funded futures once deemed impossible. Each week, Amelia sat with women who had once stood where she had battered, exhausted, but burning with quiet hope. In their determination, she saw reflections of her own journey. She avoided the spotlight, turning down television appearances, book deals, speaking invitations. Fame wasn't her goal. Real work was. Some evenings, after the center closed, Amelia walked the halls, stopping by photos of women holding diplomas, small businesses opening, Mothers reunited with their children. One evening, she sat down with the board, all former clients of Moms Rising. Each of them once broken, now thriving, shared a story. A bakery launched from a kitchen dream, a tech startup born in a shelter, a law degree pursued against impossible odds. Amelia listened, smiling quietly. As for Whitmore, he vanished from public life. No comebacks, no redemption arcs. His name faded, a whisper in old news archives. Sometimes, Amelia passed a magazine stand and caught a glimpse of a retrospective headline, Rise and Fall. She never picked up the copies. Her focus stayed on the women who walked through her doors tired, hopeful, ready for a second chance. They didn't care about headlines. They cared about change. Late one evening, Amelia locked the doors and stepped outside. The street was quiet. The sky stretched wide and dark. She paused, breathing in the cool air, the weight of everything she carried and everything she had let go. Victory didn't always look like a trophy or a parade. Sometimes it looked like a woman standing alone in the dark, knowing she had fought the right battles and won. She smiled to herself, a small, private smile, then walked down the empty street. No cameras, no applause, fade. Just footsteps, steady and sure, fading into the night. A year slipped by quietly. The world moved on, chasing new headlines and fresh scandals. But some stories didn't need constant noise to leave their mark. Moms Rising expanded steadily the way strong things grow, reaching cities Amelia had never visited. The programs evolved too, weaving job training, shelter, entrepreneurship courses, childcare support, and mental health counseling into a lifeline for those who needed it most. More women stepped forward, former clients turned mentors. They built businesses, returned to school, raised their children with new hope. Some came back to work alongside Amelia, offering the same hand that had once lifted them. At quarterly gatherings, they'd sit in circles, sharing coffee and victories big and small, a diploma earned, a business launched, a home bought after years of uncertainty. One day, a former Moms Rising participant stood before a classroom, teaching computer skills to young mothers. Her eyes caught Amelia's at the back of the room, no longer seeing a celebrity, but a mentor, a sister, a steady presence. Amelia listened more than she spoke, letting their stories echo in her silence. In a world obsessed with noise, she learned the value of quiet perseverance, how it gave space for others to rise. Whitmore's name faded into a footnote, a lesson in MBA ethics classes on arrogance and downfall. On rare nights, doubts would creep in, but Amelia only had to walk the halls lined with photos, women smiling with certificates, children clutching toys, families rebuilding from the ground up. Real victories weren't measured in headlines or bank accounts. They were measured in lives quietly, stubbornly changed. Outside, the city pulsed and roared, as always impatient, relentless. But within the walls Amelia helped build, another kind of future took root. Steady, unshakable, built to last. Amelia Brooks's story was never meant to be loud. It was never about headlines or victories shouted from rooftops. It was about something quieter, a woman, alone at the start, standing against a force much bigger, armed with nothing but her truth and resolve. She didn't win by being louder. She won by being unwavering. In a world addicted to spectacle, Amelia showed us something different: steady work, quiet progress, lives changed one by one. Because sometimes the most powerful battles aren't fought under bright lights. Sometimes silence shakes the world the hardest. If you believe in the quiet power of resilience, like and subscribe to Unveiled Wealth. Silent stories can still create the biggest change.